Thanks again for your help, as always, for the Russian and then the.
Yes, I owe you, still owe you audio.
Oh, that's no problem.
Yes.
No problem. But yeah, I saw the correction there for some of the numbers and some of the forms for talking about the lessons or okay. So if I only said I was going to do one lesson in Spanish and French, would it still be uroki?
If it would be one lesson of Spanish and one lesson of French?
Or like two languages in one lesson?
Two languages in one lesson, it would be урок. Я буду вести урок итальянского и испанского и французского.
Oh, okay. But if it were like two separate lessons, it would be uroki. Okay. Okay, cool. Yeah. So how's your week been?
As usual. Busy week.
Hello.
Hi, Татьяна.
Oh.
Привет. Как дела?
Хорошо.
Как было как прошла твоя неделя?
Как прошла? Как прошла твоя неделя? Много работы, много занятий.
Как у меня.
Много заданий по португальскому, испанскому. Упражнения. На этой неделе мне надо было написать 3 текста на португальском языке.
30?
3 текста. 3 текста.
Текста.
Чтобы их проверили.
И как пойдет твой португальский?
Ну, я понимаю, но еще плохо говорю.
И как обычно ты говоришь на португальском с друзьями?
Я общаюсь с ними в приложении HelloTalk. И отправляю сообщения, голосовые сообщения, voice messages. Voice messages to check my pronunciation.
Yeah, can you tell me a little bit more about that? Like sending voice messages and getting feedback? Because that's kind of like what I would like to talk about today, actually, is how well does that work? Do you see some improvements?
I began to use WhatsApp recently, and I think it's good. It's good because you can send voice messages too, and you can check your pronunciation or just listen to some natives. And my friends tell me that my pronunciation is good, but sometimes I mix it very often with Spanish. So that's my problem now.
Yeah, I still do the same thing. I speak Portuñol, a mix of Spanish and Portuguese. But
last Sunday, I practiced with my friend from Brazil. I read a text. Sometimes I use Spanish constructions, and he asked me, "Why do you use Spanish? We speak Portuguese, not Spanish." That was some confusion for me. But I hope it will be better soon. step by step.
Mhm.
And many Brazilians are very surprised when they know that many Russian people learn Portuguese
Mhm.
of Brazil
Yeah.
because they wonder why it's very far.
Mhm.
Why do they learn? I don't know. I learn because I like to learn languages.
Mhm. Mhm. Is there any cultural exchanges between Russia and Brazil, or economic relations?
I think there are many exchanges in culture and some food export. I think I don't know exactly, but maybe coffee. Coffee is um, imported or exported. No.
Exported from Brazil, but maybe imported
Exported from Brazil
into.
here to Russia.
Hmm.
I don't know. I think it is.
Okay. Yeah, and are there any, I don't know, Brazilian restaurants or any products that you normally see aside from coffee? Or-
Here in our city, I don't think we have. Maybe we have, but I don't know. I don't know. And in application Hello Talk, there are many Brazilians who learn Russian,
Oh yeah,
and they
interesting.
used to say, "Oh, Russian is very difficult, but we like it."
Mm-hmm.
Yes, yes.
I've also noticed in Mexico, Mexico City, that there is some Russian culture here.
Mm-hmm.
Where I live a few I live a few blocks away from the Russian embassy, and
Mm-hmm.
there are like one or two little Russian kind of coffee shops that kind of tailor to the staff that work there. And I in another neighborhood, I know there was like another small kind of coffee shop that I went to one time, and I think in the and then a long time ago, famous there was a famous relationship with uh, what's his name? I'm forgetting his name. Uh, oh, he was involved in the politics like after the revolution, and then he was exiled in Mexico City. What's his name? Trotsky. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Trotsky lived in Mexico City, and he was friends with Diego Rivera and Frida Kahlo. And
Mm-hmm.
I visited the Trotsky house, and yeah, so there was some kind of relations with kind of the kind of, some kind of open-mindedness towards the communist during the communist era, and I think there were I knew at least like one of my Russian teachers had an opportunity to come to Mexico after the Soviet Union ended, and I think just Mexico seemed very exotic, and then he was living here for a long time, so I think there is a small Russian community here. So I do know there are some Russian speakers. I have heard once or twice. I have heard Russian on the street. I've been very surprised, but thinking, okay, this would be very far away from Mexico. But there are some people who live here.
I have a friend from Washington, and he learns Russian. And once we have a video call, and he was in the Russian shop there in Washington, and he showed me the products as we have the same here in Russia, the same products there
Mm.
in Washington. Yes, it was very interesting, and he was asking me, "What can I buy? What can I recommend him to buy?" And he bought a red caviar, some bread, and butter, and made a sandwich like we do here in Russia.
Yeah. What is a typical sandwich? You would have butter and then caviar.
Sometimes we use it, but not often because caviar is expensive here. I don't know,
Expensive.
but
Yeah.
in Khabarovsk, caviar is expensive. I don't know exactly.
Yes, of course, expensive.
Maybe some, I don't know,
Maybe
some
not so
thousand.
not so expensive as uh, in your city, but anyway.
Which regions are the principal producers for caviar?
I think Far East is not only producer, but I think mostly.
Far East, yes, and because there is a sea or ocean there, which is the resource of or source resource or source
Source. Or the
source of
Mhm.
getting that source.
I think ocean is source and fish is resource, right?
That's a little tricky. I mean, source would be the origin. Resource could be something you use to do
Yeah.
something. So like you have natural resources,
Mhm.
like wood, minerals, uh, things like that. But for natural resources, their source is nature.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
Source, yes, source.
yeah, I mean, if you're talking about the origin of something.
I have a question. I saw that in one of your comments.
Mm-hmm.
Fine-tuning stage. What
Ah,
some
fine.
Brazilian girl wrote there.
Oh yeah, yeah. I was commenting on her.
Fine-tuning stage. I don't understand what does it mean.
To fine tune is like you know you can also see with my fingers here that I'm making a very small gesture. Um, if you can imagine, let's say, a music mixing table, like where you have the volume buttons. Like if you were mixing music, you to get things the perfect balance, you're not going to be making these huge changes. Eventually, you're going to be making very small, incremental changes. So, in terms of a language, little tiny mistakes accumulate, and at the beginning stage, everything is just you learn something new, you apply it, and then this comment we just had right now about source and resource, that's an example at like probably an intermediate level where now you have two vocabulary words and you have to choose between one or the other and understand the context differences, usage differences, connotations, something's positive, negative, and then when you get to a really advanced level, you are fixing all your little grammatical mistakes, pronunciation mistakes, syntax mistakes, and really getting it perfect. And I always tell people, like, if I start to speak in a foreign language, people are not going to give me credit for like speaking 90% correct. They're now going to switch and focus on maybe 10% the mistakes I say, and they'll say, "Yeah, you speak really well, but you say this, and you do this and this," and those little things are what still keep you back from not speaking, I don't know, perfectly. So when you want to get to that last stage of like C1, C2, you need to fix a really large amount of tiny mistakes. I also compare this to, like, if you see in cartoons, like a boat and there's water coming in and you put the finger here and then the leak goes over here, you put the finger there, and then you're fixing these little mistakes. That's kind of like what's going on. Of you try to stop these little things, and it's just constant effort for smaller and smaller things, and it is a little frustrating because you have to focus all your attention on one little detail, and then understanding what's the difference between this and this. And sometimes it can be just, it's very arbitrary, or it doesn't seem like there's a logical rule, and you just have to memorize things until they become automatic. And meanwhile, you might have some mistakes that are automatic, and then it can be hard to fix those mistakes because you may be using them for a long time, and then you have to make a conscious effort to fix them, and then consciously speak correctly until that recorrects itself and becomes automatic, and that can take time. If there's some kind of bad habits or things have kind of seeped in. I think Liliana is trying to join here with through her mobile. Let me just send her a message here. So I think she wants to join, but she's driving, so we don't want to distract her too much. But yeah, that fine tuning. That's where this kind of and there's another expression I use: iron out. If you're doing ironing and you have, I know, wrinkles, you're really spending a long time to get that little thing perfect. And then you see something out, and then you work on that. So also another image I talk about is people talk about a plateau, but I really don't think plateau is flat. Because when something's flat, you can just sit there and nothing happens. You're okay. But in reality, a plateau is actually an incline, because if you do nothing, you go backwards. So there's actually, you need to do some maintenance to stay there. It's like if you're driving and you're using like a manual car and you're on a hill and you're not using your brakes, you're just using the motor and your feet to kind of stay in position. You actually do have to use a little bit of gas to keep the car from falling backwards. So that's a minimum effort. If I was actually on a flat surface, I could take my foot off the gas and I wouldn't forward, I wouldn't move backward. But so really, when you reach a plateau, it's like your gas is on the pedal, you're not moving, so you're not falling backwards, but like you need to increase the gas to kind of move forward on an incline. And so that kind of effort reduces. So it's like most of the time you're at a beginning stage and you're on a flat surface, and then suddenly you reach this incline, and the same amount of energy is not going to help you. It's just going to keep you maintaining the level. So I think a plateau is actually like it's kind of is a confusing concept where you think, if I don't do anything, my language is going to be okay. I don't have to maintain it. Ciao Liliana.
Ciao Jonathan. Ciao a tutti. I am driving by my car, but I wanted to join you for a while. And so, well, I wish you a good Saturday. So I can, unfortunately, I can stay here for well, about half an hour, but I am happy as usual to share with you my thoughts and to know yours.
Yeah, pleasure to talk with you as always.
So I think that we are talking about learning a language in a synchronous way, something like that. Is it correct?
Yeah, yeah, and again, reference back to the cross-language learning is an excellent example of that.
Well,
And I've
I can share with you my latest experience with a buddy from Australia. You know that Italy and Australia have not feasible time zone sometimes, so it's so hard to have synchronous exchanges, but we are experiencing a good language exchange. Well, firstly, because this guy is very eclectic and is sending me a lot of his readings, and I am able to listen to these readings. Well, actually, is using the asimil method, and it's very interesting. Now I proposed him to do an experiment, just like what the based on the philosophy of the cross reverse reading. So he sent me the asimil text he is using, and we are reading these exercises actually. And well, I think that in some way the new media are helping these practices, but I do think that a weekly hangout or a, well, it's better a real language experience. It's the ideal sorry, the ideal tool to use together with all the asynchronous way of cross learning. So that well, this is my thought.
Yeah, I definitely agree that large time zone differences can make it really complicated to have a live session. Recently, with a couple of my language lessons, like the students are paying for lessons, and if the internet connection is bad, I feel really frustrated because I want to throw like all my energy into the lesson and helping that student, but sometimes the audio, the internet connection just makes it like there's an interference in there. So I'm like, can you say that again? Sorry, can you repeat? And then the quality of the lesson just really falls apart sometimes. But I think with some of these messages, maybe there's a mix of asking the students, can you record yourself during this lesson? Send me the audio file afterwards. I can review this, double check that I understood what were these comments, and that way there's no problem with the internet connection in a session. So I think there could be a balance between having a backup audio file and then kind of also having this live session where it is kind of working there, but it's a mix, like where you have you want to have the live session, but if there's an internet problem, then it's really difficult to kind of understand somebody in a foreign language, have a proper communication. I mean, if you were live with the actual person in the same room, you wouldn't have these difficulties. They would be different. They would be like, okay, listening problems or speaking problems, but they wouldn't be related to, oh, can you say that again? can you say that again? Oh, you're breaking up. Can you say that again? So that really kind of the internet for those kind of Skype sessions or Hangout sessions sometimes can have it can be an obstacle when it should help, and then I have to go like plan B, plan C for different platforms for that. But so that's one of the reasons why I like this kind of having an audio message that you could record yourself speaking. And this also works, I think, for whenever I do some of these interviews with people now, if I'm 100% dependent on the Google Hangout for the recording, there's a risk that there might be some problem with the audio in that live session. So one of the standards is like each person records themselves independently. They have the live session, so there is the communication live, but then when the interview is then re-edited, it's taking the two separate audio files and then making it sound like the two people were in the same room, and it eliminates any of that kind of internet connection problem. But I think as a language exchange, like an asynchronous language exchange, I think this exchanging one audio file to another, I mean, it can help a little bit, but yeah, the live session could, I mean, it's ideal, but having a really good connection, an internet connection is really important for that. So, so it's kind of a combination of both, I think. So it's not so frustrating.
Yes, I am also interested in some new ways of asynchronous communication, because my time zone is like Australian, and I also feel always this problem. It's very difficult to find partner in Europe as well as in America. It's not convenient time zone, really. It's not only with languages, it's also with freelancing. Some customers require ability to communicate in certain time, and usually it is 3 or 4 at night. So I had to work at night, because sometimes it's interesting projects and you need to do it if you want to take part. And for language exchange, I think actually this project of Liliana was maybe is perfect way to communicate asynchronous, because it's interesting, it's involving. Yeah, I like these reading sessions, and it's I don't know, it's easy. You don't need to, I don't know, think what to do next. It's very clear. You have book, you read book. So I also had another experience in our group, language exchange, when some guy was asking me questions about Russian. For example, a question was about soft sign in Russian. Why we need this, and what if he won't use it? So I came up with some examples when word with soft sign and without soft sign may
be confusing.
Yes, have different meanings, and you have get confusing situation if you just didn't use soft sign. So we exchange asynchronous. He just asked me in Messenger, and when I had time, I recorded audio with examples and sent him. So it's also, but it's way one-to-one, and Liliana's project better because it's exchange many to many. It's more interesting. So now I'm following your live lessons, and I think it can be another interesting way for many-to-many communication, but it's not exactly synchronous.
That's the difficulty with the live lesson is it does become like at a certain time, but because of the recording, people can see it afterwards. So it's there's kind of the benefits and the difficulties of the language learning with connecting people at the same time, then having access to content that's recorded that they can see or listen to a second time. What I was going to say here, I really like that approach that you're saying, of many to many, because when I get individual questions as a teacher, I sometimes end up kind of not always having that little moment to kind of quickly answer. It almost arrives as like an interruption, and then I have to just set aside a time to answer in a batch of like 5, 6 questions or something. And sometimes I'd like to be able to crowdsource some of these answers and say like, okay, this question is not just to me. Like in a forum, it could be a lot of people answering that. So that's why I think with this, another trying this out yesterday with those audio files, is kind of telling people I don't want to take this conversation into a private exchange. I want to keep it public so that more people can participate. And if there are people wanting to learn some of these same languages that I'm trying to learn, then my little comments or my mistakes or the corrections that I'm getting publicly benefit more people. Because I mean, I'm not the only one making that same mistake. There's a possibility for many people to kind of see the process, how it can improve. But yeah, I like that many to many approach when it's kind of public. And I think sometimes with the private, you suddenly become like, well, what do we talk about? I don't know. And then it's really, there's a lot of weight on making sure that exchange works. Because if it doesn't, then you stop getting interested in that other person. But when it's many to many, you're not just dependent on that one person. You have access to many more people who can voice their opinion, and maybe you also have levels of expertise in that language, or as a student levels of expertise, or as a native speaker levels of expertise. So you get a lot more value, potential value, when there's as a group for the crowdsourcing, or asking for audio files, asking for input, asking for translations. I think there's a lot more potential on that side.
And what about your new project, mini project, when you posted several audios and invite people to answer? What is your plans, or no plans? It's just one post, or you planning to continue some project on top of this?
Yeah, it's kind of baby steps. Just kind of one of the other bloggers, Agnieszka Murdoch, who has the 5-Minute Language website. I think a lot of her approach is like, find those little bite-sized moments to accumulate some learning. And as you guys can imagine, with my teaching schedule and then with my family, 5 minutes is actually a lot of time. if I try to say, okay, I'm going to learn in an hour, well, there's always going to be an interruption. So then I've been recently going like, okay, I'll try to get a half hour, and even a half hour, wishing for a half hour, it's just there's something or something, but I can at least commit to, okay, for 5 minutes, I'm going to learn to say 1 or 2 sentences, and then maybe do some research with a dictionary, with some phrase book, learn something, just keep my mind active, and then try to listen to how that might be recorded with like maybe like a Google text to speech, and then record myself, and more importantly, get the feedback from a native speaker to say, yeah, this is correct. Because if I just ask them, hey, could you translate this sentence for me and record it, there isn't really much of me doing like being active in that learning. If I'm just kind of, hey, translate this for me, give it to me, it's just a passive consumption. I didn't do any work. The native speaker did it for me. So I think there has to be some kind of active connecting the dots, and I can do that like for 2 or 3 sentences in 5 minutes, learn some words, and then instantly kind of keep track of those little moments, and hope that they will accumulate little by little. I mean, it's not the ideal way to learn a language. I mean, it'll take a long time. It'll be very slow. But if I contribute my little piece of publicizing or publishing my learning, if there's another learner also learning that language who wants to participate, and they also show like the Italki notebook entries, I can observe other people's mistakes, and I can see the corrections that they get, and it's almost like a vicarious way of learning the language. But as I said, it's passive. I'm not the one producing that content, doing the research and thinking. I'm just consuming somebody else's content and their corrections. But if we each, as a group, observe each other, and I do my little piece, and 9 other people contribute, then I don't just get my little piece of one. I can get 10 pieces of information. So I think that's the benefit of learning in a group, learning in a class, is when you do what you're trying to learn, yeah, that's for your benefit. But when everybody is sharing their observations and what they learn, or what their difficulties are, what their struggles are, we all benefit, because we can all see, oh yeah, I would have said that, I would have made that same mistake, and then you see the correction. Or so you don't have to make all the same mistakes. You can learn from other people's mistakes and kind of, as a group, collectively learn and improve, instead of just making one single effort as an individual and having like this really long time. I think like having a lot of people involved, like the kind of the tide, the water kind of collectively rises for everybody. So that's, and also the accountability. If I have this public and getting people involved, I think this kind of, I want to do something of quality. I want to do something beneficial for many people. And like those live lessons the other day, like I had the Spanish and French kind of like the last minute, and feeling like I need to get this done because we're going live. And so like, but if I didn't have that pressure or that urgency to say like, okay, this is public, there's a lot of people who might benefit from this. Like I'm pushing myself to like have some content there, and not just let it sit around and say, okay, if I have time, I'll get around to this someday. But I'm saying like, no, here's a time limit, here is a deadline, I need to have this content, and we're going live, and I'm doing it. And I think that's one of the ways I work, is just under pressure, because if I don't have that little pressure, it ends up at the back of the line of priorities. So like I have 5 minutes. I can find 5 minutes here and there, and try to be productive with it instead of just wasting time.
So, what about live lessons? Will you continue next week?
Yeah, I will plan on with the live lessons. I think, yeah, we've done some things here with the phrases and those descriptions. I think we can. I'd like to start getting into a little bit more basic verbs. I've mentioned that in another audio file that I did, and maybe another text table that I think I put on like Instagram. But I think now that there are some characters that we can talk about, like yourself, your family members, now there are people that you can kind of start to expand the descriptions and the conjugations, I think. So yeah, so I'm gonna try to put some phrases together based on what we've done so far and based on what I understand for some verb conjugations. So I think I'll try to do a little bit of the work on there and try to get some corrections to know if the sentences are correct, instead of just the translations. Yeah, a little bit I think will be verb, like beginning verb conjugations for some basic verbs, so people can kind of start to talk about things in the present tense. Because I think up until now there's been things with like the verb to be, the verb have, the verb kind of come from, so like somebody's origin. What else here? Where they live. So those are just a few like limited phrases that you would maybe use just in an introduction, but might not continuously use for kind of conjugating verbs and seeing how verbs work. So I'll try to take some these first phrases that you would use when learning the language. So some things like the speak or learn, speak, learn. What else on there? Speak, learn, understand. Speak, learn, understand. Know, like to know, I don't know, or I don't understand, or some of those communication phrases. And yeah, what other verbs would you add in those kind of essentials between speak, understand, know, learn? Maybe read, write, see. Yeah, I think those end up being some of the top, like frequent 10 or so phrases when you start learning a language.
Okay, it's about time. We playing the same time.
Yeah, probably about the same time for that. Okay. I think I hear my kid. You probably hear my kids awake as well.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to get going for breakfast before the house falls apart. But yeah, I'll put together some content, some ideas, and send you guys a message later, or put together a document. Maybe I'll send a message, but just.
Okay.
Thank you.
So,
Yeah,
okay.
thanks. Yeah, I'm a little getting distracted now.
Have a good weekend.
Yeah, you too. You too. Pleasure as always to talk with you guys. So.
Bye. Bye. See you.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care.
See you next time.